and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. From very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday. I have a great show planned for you today. Apparently, and as if all of us didn't already know this, there are a tremendous amount of leftists in our university town of Laramie. Leftists in Laramie, my friends, and they packed a town hall meeting for Harriet Hageman last night, and it was, the cow pie describes it as rowdy. I think rowdy goes a little bit further, and I'm going to play for you a whole bunch of audio from the town hall last night, and it was disrespectful, and I had to, one of the fans of Cowboy State Politics called me last night, and the way she described the event last night was the most disappointing thing that she had ever watched, and that our representative could be disrespected in such a manner. And when you hear the audio, you'll understand exactly what I mean here. But a really rowdy event, and of course, everybody has the freedom of speech. But man, just imagine this: those people are going to be running our country someday. Yeah, when we're all old and gray. The folks that were at Harriet's town hall last night are going to be the ones that are in charge of everything. If that doesn't terrify you, I don't know what will. We've had a 10th Circuit decision in the corner crossing case. I've been following that one for a long time, and it's way more complicated than one court decision or one idea of solving that whole thing. It's really a big problem It's been an issue in Wyoming since our founding, probably before that. And, Wyoming, above, I think, all of the western states, has a bigger problem than any other state. So we'll talk about that. And then, of course, I don't know if you know this or not, but there's been more CO2 in the atmosphere this past year than in the previous 800,000 years. More climate hilarity from the radical left, and we'll talk about that. And then Claire McCaskill says that President Trump is just like President Putin. He disappears people all the time. Yep. One day you'll see folks, and then the next day they'll never be heard from again. Trump acts exactly like President Putin. Just absolutely bizarre, my friends. So we begin this morning, though, with the cow pie and Harriet Hageman's town hall last night. In an article entitled, Hageman Doesn't Back Down as Hostile Crowd Curses at Her at Unruly, I guess rowdy was not the right word, unruly Laramie Town Hall. And I quote, U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman walked right into a hornet's nest Wednesday night. More than 500 people packed into the the Gyphon Theater at the Laramie Civic Center from her town hall, with at least 75% there opposed to her, a startling dynamic in the deeply Republican state of Wyoming. It continued a trend of Democrats and those who oppose President Donald Trump and his policies, and Hageman's support of them, challenging her during a series of her events over the past week. Things in Laramie turned ugly from the get-go, with some people screaming profanities and flashing the middle finger to Hageman as soon as she took the stage. But Hageman would not back down, staying on stage for more than 45 minutes and telling the audience that they were behaving in an embarrassing manner. At one point, she urged them to stop screaming or they might have a heart attack. Hageman told Cowboy State Daily that what happened Wednesday is common in college towns across America these days. And she's absolutely right. For the last week or so, I've been covering town hall meetings of members of Congress, and there's an effort nationwide to create a spectacle, to have protests at all members of Congress's town halls, and it's being pushed by this group Indivisible. Now, I don't have any direct evidence that any of these town halls have been pushed by this group or that any of them have even been influenced by it, but it is kind of coincidental. And, maybe the state of politics as it is kind of facilitates that. But let me begin here with playing a little bit of sound from when Harriet first walked on stage. Listen to this. Beep.
Very excited to be back in Laramie, Wyoming.
Beep.
What we're going to do is I see a lot of signs around, and I understand what you're trying to say. I really like it.
Beep.
But I would really like you to please take
All right. That's enough of it. Wow, huh? That's something we don't see in Wyoming all that often. Usually, when our elected officials hold a town hall, things are fairly calm, though it is not unheard of to have some excited people, but usually it doesn't devolve into this gigantic mess that it did last night. So anyway, Harriet did stay on the stage for an extended period of time, and I've got several more pieces of sound that I'm going to play in just a second that shows you the backbone that she has. One of my favorite parts is she was asked a question about the First Amendment. Why don't you support the First Amendment? And she replies, I think you're forgetting one word, peaceably, to peaceably assemble and ask for a redress of grievances. See, last night, and they're in a college town, and we all know that the University of Wyoming is one of the more liberal universities in this part of the country, and it's shocking to many people that in Wyoming our school would be one of the more radical ones. But it absolutely is. If you've spent any time on the campus at the University of Wyoming, all you got to do is walk around campus, and you'll see pride flags here, pride flags there, anti-Israel stuff, definitely anti-Semitic stuff on campus. I mean, it truly is amazing and eye-opening. Now, I told you that I was speaking to a friend of mine last night, and another thing that she said was, how do I send my kids to college? How could I possibly, in good conscience, send them to the University of Wyoming if this is how they're going to turn out? And she's exactly right. One of the biggest problems we have in our country is our higher education system, that it has been taken over by radicals, and it is, it may be irreparable. Now, it wasn't that long ago that the University of Wyoming came under scrutiny from the Trump administration for a PhD program, which they've said that they've now done away with. I don't believe that for a second, because if you think about a year and a half ago, the legislature demanded that the University of Wyoming stop doing all of their DEI crap. So the university's response was to close their multicultural affairs department and their DEI office. And then there were a couple of articles that said, well, we've reassigned those people to other departments. Yeah. So if they were part of the multicultural affairs and DEI office and you've put them somewhere else, isn't it a pretty good theory that they're going to keep doing the same stuff? Well, of course they are. Secondly, we can say that we're going to eliminate critical race theory and DEI from our education system. But you need to understand that Wyoming K through 12 schools get 93% of their teachers from the University of Wyoming. And we already know that the university is, and last night's event is clear evidence of this, but that they are absolutely not going to fulfill the mission, their land grant mission. The University of Wyoming is a land grant university. Their main goal, or at least their original goal, was to focus on agriculture, things that'll better the state of Wyoming. But they've strayed far, 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 far away from that. Let's go to another piece of audio here. I didn't label this one, so we're kind of playing roulette with the sound bites today. But here's another piece of audio from last night. So what's happening here? What's happening is there's actually somebody trying to ask a question of Representative Hageman, and you can hear the shouts in the background. You're a terrorist! And let me continue.
Thank you very much for being here today and doing town hall. I am a registered Republican. I do not agree with a lot of what's going on. But what I wanted to say was thank you for the wonderful words that you said about our honorable and past Senator Al Simpson. He's amazing, and you really said beautiful.
Okay, all right. So there's another great example. Now, I mentioned that First Amendment soundbite. Let's listen to this.
My question concerns the First Amendment to the Constitution. I know where I'm at. Yeah, I'm getting there. My question is this. How do you claim to be upholding the Constitution if you won't stand against the actions of the current administration that bans select news agencies and press briefings, or when the current president declares protests that speak against his interests illegal? When a graduate student from Columbia University held a green card that allowed him to...
All right, listen to them applaud. See, this is the issue you've been hearing about in the news, where there was that radical Hamas sympathizer who Trump threw out of the country, and the reason for it is he's a green card holder. But that doesn't allow you to stay in the country if you commit crimes. Rather, it's kind of expected that if you are engaged in criminal activity, then you are going to be deported, which is what happened with this guy. He supported terrorists. I mean, he's advocated for violence. Harriet's going to talk about it at the end of the soundbite. When you're advocating for the end of Western civilization, your green card doesn't cash that check. Here, let's listen to some more.
This looks to me like 4 of the 5 freedoms that are protected by the First Amendment are being penalized rather than protected. Those being speech, the right, assembly, and the right to petition the government.
You forgot a word. You forgot a word. The word is peaceably. The word is peaceably. That's what the First Amendment says.
One of the things I love about Representative Hageman is that she doesn't back down. That when she's confronted with a radical leftist like this, she stands her ground and says, you forgot a word in the First Amendment. It's peaceably. And you could hear the reaction from the crowd that it just inflamed her. In fact, going back to Trotsky's article, he makes a comment in there that she egged the audience on that, and she's talking to, let's see here, maybe I'll get to it. Anyway, there was a comment in Trotsky's piece where Representative Hageman was condescending to the crowd. It's not condescending to stand up there and correct them. If you're having obscenity shouted at you and you clap back at them, that's not being condescending. That's holding your ground. There's a big difference in that. And in Wyoming, we should, in my opinion anyway, we should appreciate that sort of attitude, that we don't back down to people that want to shut us up. You see, Harriet Hageman has just as much right to speak at that event as all of those protesters did. And, I would never say that the protesters didn't have a right to be there, that they didn't have a right to try to disrupt the event. But at some point, your protest ceases to be useful even to your own causes. And here's the thing. I've never quite understood like a rowdy protest that, a couple of years ago, we saw speakers being thrown off of university campuses in California. They just weren't allowed to speak, that folks were shouted down. I don't think that facilitates your cause in any way. I mean, because if your only purpose is to shut somebody up so that they can't make an argument, then really, I mean, you've kind of lost the argument, simply because you're not willing to engage in any sort of dialogue. You're not willing to further your cause. Instead, you just want to shout somebody down and shut them up. Back to the article. David Wilhelms, who organized a pre-town hall rally against Hageman, told Cowboy State Daily before the event that he appreciated that she was holding a town hall despite not agreeing with her politics. But much of the audience didn't show the same appreciation. Wilhelms and Albany County Democrat Party Chair Klaus Hausbutt, who knows how you pronounce his name, both promoted the event beforehand as an opportunity to conduct civil discourse with Hageman and let her answer their questions better than a similarly raucous town hall in Rock Springs. If they had any illusions that the town hall in Laramie was going to be more civil than it was in Rock Springs, they were absolutely out of their mind, because it is Laramie, and you do have a bunch of leftists that are running around that campus. So from the very beginning, it was not going to be more civil. There was not going to be more conversation that was held. It was going to be a raucous event. Let's hear. Trotsky says Hausbutt said absolutely nothing was achieved Wednesday night, lamenting that the heckling was out of control and not productive. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Quote, "We're better than this," he told the Cowboy State Daily. "This doesn't represent Albany County. I've lived here too long. I'm heartbroken. This is not who we are." He also suspected some of the most raucous people in the audience were not from Albany County. Wilhelms also said he was disappointed in how the evening went, but he also said Hageman didn't help matters, here it is, throughout the evening, at times answering questions in what they saw as a condescending manner. Now, this could be what they're referring to. Listen to this.
It's so bizarre to me how obsessed you are with federal government, but here's the thing. She's doing is you guys are going to have a heart attack if you don't calm down. I'm sorry. Your hysteria is just really over the top.
Wow. You're going to have a heart attack if you don't calm down. Well, she's absolutely right. At the beginning of this segment, I played you some sound bites of a guy in the back. And all of this sound is coming from video that was taken last night. And it's if you watch the video, the guy is absolutely freaking out. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. But I mean, I guess that's what you get in a university town when somebody challenges what you've been told in your university, threatens to shatter your fragile view of the world and what you want. Anyway, that's what happens down at UW. Good job, Representative Hageman, for standing your ground. That's what I appreciate. We'll have more when we come back. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election.
Siberia.
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada.
Straight to hell. Iceland.
France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be Gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is Wyoming's most listened to political program. The Cowboy State Politics podcast is available Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. You can subscribe and follow the program at the website cowboystatepolitics.com or anywhere that you get your podcasts. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone. To the Wyoming turkey vulture. An article entitled, Wyoming Lawmakers Celebrate Baby Steps to Encourage Housing Development. Of course. Now, this is a big lie that, all of the Democrat-leaning representatives and senators, for that way. I heard it all through the legislative session. We've got to do something about affordable housing. Affordable housing this, our workers have to have a place to live. There was a giant controversy during this session over Senate File 40 when the practice of housing mitigation fees to pay for affordable housing was when they attempted to outlaw that practice. So, yeah, I mean, it was a big topic during the legislative session. But the reason why there weren't any bills passed, as the turkey vulture suggests, to, quote, deal with affordable housing is that's not the government's job. It's not the job of the government to give you a house, nor is it the job of the government to make sure that there's housing for anybody. That's your job. If you want to move to a community and seek employment in some place that's going to help you and your family, well, it's up to you to find a place to live. That's not the job of the government, my friends. To the article, and I quote, Wyoming lawmakers didn't pass a single bill that directly addressed the shortage of affordable housing in the state. But on Wednesday, Governor Mark Gordon signed Senate File 171 into law with the hope that it will be a small step towards incentivizing more housing development. The legislation removes a development process that the Cheyenne Planning and Development Director Charles Bloom described as redundant. Currently, municipalities in Wyoming are required to mark new city boundaries when annexing new properties with monuments. These monuments are typically rebar hammered into the ground at property corners. However, when the land is developed, those markers are typically removed when developers grade the entire site. And then surveyors are required to go back and replace the monuments later. This legislation amends that process so that the monument marking only needs to be done once. Okay, whatever. But the point is that it is not the job of you, the taxpayer, to pay for somebody else's home. That's not their job. That's your job. And we have gotten it into our heads that the government has to take care of us from cradle to grave, that it doesn't matter what aspect of our life it is, the government needs to take care of it. And if you thought that just because you live in Wyoming, our senators and representatives are part of that, I mean, are against that. Well, you're sadly mistaken. There are leftists just as radical in Cheyenne as they are in Pittsburgh or Illinois. It's the only difference between Wyoming and these other places, as far as liberals are concerned, is geography. That's the only difference, my friends. Other than that, there are radicals here, as was evidenced last night at the Harriet Hageman town hall. Well, you know what? We've only got 5 minutes before the end of before the break, so I don't want to get into the corner crossing debacle because it's going to take a little bit longer. We'll do that after the break. But in the Pravda on the Platte, oh, they just can't help themselves but talking about climate change and how it's going to destroy the world and how this is the worst time in our world's history about CO2 levels. From the Pravda on the Platte. In an article entitled "Last Decade Was Earth's Hottest Ever as CO2 Levels Reach an 800,000-Year High," according to a new United Nations report. Let's see here. Last year was the hottest year on record, with the top 10 hottest years were all in the past decade, and planet heating carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere are at an 800,000-year high, a report Wednesday said. In its annual State of the Climate report, the World Meteorological Organization laid bare all the markings of an increasingly warming world, with oceans at record high temperatures and sea levels rising and glaciers retreating at record speed. And I quote, "Our planet is issuing more distress signals," said Antonio Gutierrez, United Nations Secretary General. He noted that the report says the international goal of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2.8 degrees Fahrenheit since pre-industrial times is still possible. Quote, "Leaders must step up to make it happen, seizing the benefits of cheap, clean renewables for their people and economies." End quote. Oh my God. First, there isn't that big a difference between 78 degrees on a balmy summer day and 80.5 degrees. Not that big a deal. It's not going to cause the glaciers to melt nor the sea levels to rise. I love the pictures on, you see them in memes all the time, where it says, here's a picture from 1800. Notice the sea level. Here's a picture today. This is where the sea level is. Well, the truth is, all of this climate stuff, especially what the Pravda is pushing, is nothing more than fantasy. The Earth has, it's true, the climate does change, but it changes on a much longer timeline than all of these climate nuts say that it does. And to assert that this is the highest amount of CO2 in 800,000 years means that you have some scientists looking at rocks to determine, all right, well, there may have been this much CO2 in the atmosphere. It's absolutely ridiculous, my friends. And the only reason why this report says you need to purchase more renewables is so that they can make more money. It is a boondoggle. And if you look at the Green New Deal passed in this country, the vast majority, it's a huge spending bill. Trillions upon trillions of dollars that go to graft. And that's exactly what it is. And we saw the first example of that in the Obama administration with Solyndra. Joe Biden had several examples of where they were giving money to these green energy companies that never really produce anything. The windmills that you see when you leave Cheyenne headed north, or I guess, leave Midwest headed south. Anyway, those are not ever going to pay for themselves. Not a single one of them. And if you had any idea how much petroleum is used to grease the gears in those windmills, the only conclusion you could draw is that none of those things are really clean energy. None of them are green. If you walk up to the base of one of those things that's been in the ground for a couple of years, it looks like you changed your oil about 15 times at the base of those. So the point is, my friends, all of this climate hysteria is nothing more than an attempt to bilk you out of more of your tax dollars, to convince you to invest in green companies and to give your hard-earned dollars to advocacy organizations so that they can make more money. It's absolutely ridiculous. And, I foresee that you're only going to see an increase in the amount of this climate hysteria now that Trump is president. See, I did that again. Anyway, just an attempt to continue to further the climate agenda, regardless of if Trump is in the office, because now they have the argument to say, well, no, the president's not paying attention to the warming climate. He's not doing anything to help the world. Well, no, because it's a giant hoax. And there's no reason why we need to funnel trillions of our tax dollars into any of these green energy boondoggles. All of it is ridiculous. And, my friends, don't buy into it. Don't listen to the Pravda on the Platte. Don't even go there. When we come back, Corner Crossing.
Here at U.S. Coin Capital, we hear from Americans across the United States who have a growing concern about the future purchasing power of U.S. paper money. Many Americans are looking for an alternative for long-term capital. For more than 35 years, the people at U.S. Coin Capital have educated American investors on how to properly accumulate United States gold and silver coins. Call us at 1-800-878-2646 or visit us on the web, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics.
Some say standing up for what you believe in is being extreme. Ask any woman in Wyoming. They'll tell you this is called courage. The mainstream media claims that holding the line on important issues is being unreasonable. My mom taught me this is called staying true to our principles. In other places, people argue you always have to compromise to get something done. Here in Wyoming, we know that some things are worth protecting at all costs. Some say it's time we give up on the values that made our state great to accommodate toxic culture. I say it's time to stand tall and protect the values that have served Wyoming well for over 134 years. Join Honor Wyoming as we defend and preserve the Wyoming way of life. Find out how you can make a difference today.
Visit honorwyoming.org. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson. If you want to be part of the program, the phone number in the Cowboy State Politics studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. If there's something on your mind you want to opine about, maybe the radicals in Laramie, the town hall that turned into a unruly exposition of liberalism, well, then go ahead and give me a call. 307-374-8989. One more time, 307-374-8989. From the Wyoming Turkey Vulture. Corner crossing in Wyoming to remain legal, appeals court says. 3 10th Circuit Court of Appeals judges on Tuesday affirmed the ruling of lower courts that hunters can corner cross as long as hunters do not physically touch private land. Nearly half of Wyoming is federal land, and millions of acres of public land across the West are platted into checkerboarded squares, public and private land. Roughly 8.3 million acres of public land across the West is quote-unquote corner locked. A Carbon County Circuit Court jury in 2022 found 4 Missouri hunters not guilty of trespassing after the hunters used a ladder to cross from one square of Bureau of Land Management land to another near Elk Mountain in Carbon County in 2020 and 2021. The group never set foot on the private ranch adjacent to the public land, so they say. I'll explain that in just a second. The Iron Bar Ranch spans 50 square miles and is interspersed with its holdings are 27 federal and state public parcels totaling 11,000 acres, according to court documents. The landowner, North Carolina businessman Fred Eshelman, appealed to the decision by filing a civil suit in the U.S. District Court of Wyoming. Chief District Judge Scott Skevdahl in May of 2023 also ruled in favor of the hunters, but Eshelman appealed the decision to the 10th Circuit in Denver. The attorney for the 4 hunters, Ryan Semerand, was not immediately available for comment. All right, there's a ton of problems with this, and the issue is much more complicated than just saying you can hop the corner from one spot to the next. The reason it is more complicated than these hunters or even the 10th Circuit says is with our current technology, it is impossible for you to determine exactly where you're standing on any piece of property. The handheld GPS you have, or what the GPS unit that's in your phone, is only accurate within anywhere between 2 to 20 feet, depending on how many satellites you have access to, and I mean environmental factors, barometric pressure, all of that. And so while your GPS unit, your handheld unit, gives you a pretty good estimation of where you're at, it is not something that you should, rely on for any sort of legality, because it's not going to tell you exactly where you're standing. And so at any given time, even though And let's be honest, a lot of the state and BLM land does not have fences surrounding it. There's a lot of places on the mountain that there's a state section out in the middle of private land that's been leased by the landowner, and there's no fences on it. I can drive you to one right now that's really close to our cabin. And there's, like I said, if there's not a fence there, if there's not a corner, well, then you really have no idea where you're at. I mean, you could be 2 feet off of that. You could be 10 feet off of that. You could be 20 feet off of that. You don't know. Now, for those of you who think that, who cares? What damage are they going to do if they're standing on one corner and they happen to take a step onto private land? Well, the first problem with that is it's private property. And if in America, you have the right to manage and hold your private property and do with it whatever you please. That's one of our founding principles. In fact, the Constitution originally said life, liberty, and property. It did not say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That was the founders changed that because they were worried that if they left the word property in there, then the slaveholding states would say, see, the Constitution recognizes our claim to all of our slaves. They're our property. So that's why it was changed. But you do have the right to have private property, to manage it how you want, and to prevent people from coming on your property if that's what you want to do. Now, and I will admit that if somebody takes one step onto your property and then steps onto federal or state land, then it's probably not going to impact your property at all. Maybe that one little footprint will, but not that big a deal. However, one footprint turns into a permanent ladder. A permanent ladder turns into a gate. A gate turns into a 2-track road. A 2-track road turns into a 6-track road when all the rocks are exposed. And it goes on and on. And so, one of the jobs of government is to protect private property, or your right to have private property. In this situation, I mean, it's not as simple as just saying, hey, you were stepping from one corner to a next, because of the first reason I explained, because without a survey grade GPS, it's not possible to tell exactly where you're standing, no matter how accurate these phone apps purport to be. I used to work for a pipeline company, and I worked with our engineers and surveyors, and I can tell you for a fact that it doesn't matter how how much you've paid for your handheld GPS or your phone or whatever, it is not going to be accurate. Now, you complicate that matter with the checkerboarding of private and public land, both state and BLM property. Anywhere you go, it's completely checkerboarded. One of the big problems with the Rock Springs RMP is that checkerboard pattern, because it would have locked up, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of acres of private land, because it is possible for somebody to own a piece of private land out in the middle of BLM land. And so you have to cross BLM surface to get to it. Well, the Rock Springs RMP said that, there's to be no human contact anymore on federal property. Now, that's since been shelved, and we don't have to worry about that. But it does expose one of the other problems with this whole corner crossing thing, that we do have a checkerboarded pattern of land. One way that this could be solved is through land exchanges. But it has to be done fairly. And there's a problem with this, too, because you run into the Ogden Driscoll situation where he trades 100 acres of sagebrush for 80, 84, or 88 acres right next to Devil's Tower. There was one of those. There's been several of those in the Bighorn Mountains where, landowners have traded pretty valuable state ground for worthless ground out in the middle of the prairie. I shouldn't say worthless, but pretty close to worthless. And so what needs to happen is the legislature needs to take a serious study of how we solve this corner crossing situation, because just this court ruling is not going to solve it, because it doesn't answer the bigger questions surrounding the whole issue. Now, on the other hand, I've been sticking up for private property rights, but let's look at it from another perspective, that you do have a right to access public land. And, a landowner, if you're following the law and you're not trespassing and you're not doing all that, you can't be prevented from accessing public land. Now, I mentioned earlier that I can drive you right to a piece of state property that doesn't have a fence around it. And the only way that you would know if you're on state property or if you're on private property is if you knew where the boundary was. There's no fence. There's no markers there. There's no corner posts. Well, when you drive up to the corner, yeah, there's a fence there. But that's not the end of the state ground. In fact, part of the state property is fenced off because it's been leased by the landowner for, 30, 40, 50 years. And it's always been that way. So we put up a fence. So you don't know. And you can rely on maps. Map is even a more complicated thing, because, you don't have a GPS and you're trying to determine on the map exactly where you're standing. It's virtually impossible. So my point here is that this is a far more complicated situation than the turkey vulture is leading you to believe. And it's, if you're a landowner, if you're a rancher, you completely understand the problem with corner crossing. You may agree that people have a right to access public property, but you still have the problem of trespassing. And, in Wyoming, I used to think that this was kind of a ridiculous argument by landowners to say, well, you're crossing in the airspace above my property, or, you put a footprint on the grass, that's not really going to harm anything. Well, actually, I think that it does, because it, first of all, you're trespassing, and, you have the right to protect your private property just as much as somebody has a right to access public land. So anyway, my point in talking about this morning is this is a far more complicated issue than one judge or one panel of judges is going to be able to decide on. And the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, they probably have no idea about the intricacies of private property rights, how valuable those are. And to try to balance those with the public's right to access public land, I think that's a far more complicated decision than just sitting on a bench wearing a black robe and deciding one way or another. We're going to continue to have disputes like this, even though the court ruling said that corner crossing is legal. Because you can't tell where exactly you are on the surface of the earth, you're going to have cases like this over and over and over again. And it's a far more complicated situation. And I think the legislature needs to step into it and try to figure something out. I don't know how they're going to do that, because it's a whole lot of land swaps, but that might be a possible solution. Private property rights, my friends. We're talking about the Constitution today. Free speech down in Laramie and private property rights at the 10th Circuit. We'll finish up in just a second. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. If you miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics Live, you can always go to the live replay, which is located at the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, under the live replay button. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson, doing what I was born to do each and every day, with talent given to me by God himself. It's absolutely true, my friends. We have to be very, very thankful for all the gifts that we've been given, whatever those gifts may be. And it just so happens that my gift is sitting right behind this microphone talking to you each and every day. So welcome back to the program, my friends. In a bit of levity, Claire McCaskill on PMS NBC is saying that Trump is trying to disappear people like Putin does. From Breitbart News, and I quote, MSNBC contributor Claire McCaskill said Wednesday on Morning Joe, Morning Schmo, that President Donald Trump was attempting to, quote, disappear people with the deportation of hundreds of Venezuelans from the United States to El Salvador. McCaskill said, yeah, and let's not forget that this was a single judge in Texas that tried to say that mifepristone could not be used anywhere. That's called whataboutism. What about this other situation down here? You know, judges say you can't do stuff all the time, even in states where abortion was legal. And let's not forget, there was a single judge in Texas that struck down overtime minimum wage stuff that Biden put in place for federal contractors. One single judge. So there's this thing, you know, and here's how she went on to tell it. Yeah, listen to this.
The president can't just say, I'm going to pick up a bunch of people and I'm going to tell you that they are an enemy force invading our country and put them on a plane and put them in a prison in El Salvador. That's not the way America works. That's not the way due process works. That's not the way the law works in this country.
Stop. If you're an illegal alien in this country, you entered the country by breaking the law. If you did that, then you do not. First of all, you're not a citizen and you don't have all the rights that are ascribed to you in the Constitution. You don't have due process rights. If you're an illegal alien, you get deported. And absolutely, the president does have the power to say, you're here illegally, you're going home, wherever that home may be. Absolutely. The executive branch does have that authority. without trial. I mean, you broke the law getting here. So, you don't have any due process rights. A judge cannot say, turn the plane around. Even though we tried to. Good thing those planes were in the air over international airspace and maybe that's how we fight all of these activist judges. We just get all the illegal aliens on a plane before they can react. Anyway, here's the end of what McCaskill said.
The idea that a court is holding this administration accountable to the law is something that everybody should be celebrating. Regardless of your party, regardless of whether you're left, right, or middle, it doesn't matter. We've got to make sure that people cannot be picked up and disappeared like his buddy Putin does, like his buddy Xi does, like his buddy Kim Jong-un does. They do this. They disappear people.
The difference here is the Trump administration is just giving these folks a ride home. You came from El Salvador, we'll send you back. Oh, you're a gang member? Yeah, sorry about that. You're going to have to face the El Salvadorian justice system because, that's where you're a citizen of. The difference between that and what Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping does or any of those people is they're still alive in the Trump administration. Yeah, we're putting you on a plane and sending you home. It's not like Putin does and chops you up into little bits and you're never heard from or seen on the face of the planet ever again. This is hysteria from the Democrat Party. And actually, a lot of these activist judges aren't following the law. All this week, I've been talking about judicial activism and how it is absolutely stretching the bounds of what the Constitution grants to the federal court system. And the truth is, the Constitution only sets up the Supreme Court. None of the appeals courts, the district courts, circuit courts, whatever, none of those things are in the Constitution. Those are a creation of Congress. And what Congress should do to rein in all of these activist judges is defund their court. Yeah. That's exactly right. That's all they have to do. Congress has the ability to create a judicial district and to dismantle a judicial district, or to fund one or not to fund one. And, if you want to get a handle on activist judges, and let me just define what I mean by activist judge. A judge's job is to, look at a case and see how it applies to the law, see how the law applies to that specific case. A judge's job is not to create law out of whole cloth, to just because of their own political biases, be able to say, well, I'm saying that abortion is health care. No, that's not the role of Melissa Owens in Teton County, and it's not the role of this judge that said turn the plane around. The judicial branch judges things. The legislative branch writes laws, or they legislate. The executive branch executes the laws. We have three co-equal branches of government. And, we hear this fight in Wyoming all the time. I don't know, usually the governor would issue veto letters, and I don't remember seeing one this legislative session, but in past legislative sessions, he has said, I'm vetoing this because it infringes on the separation of powers. And of course, that's just the governor's, opinion of the matter. But the separation of powers is important. It's the legislature that writes the laws. It's the executive branch that enforces the laws, and it's the judicial branch that judges people based on the laws. And all of this goes back to the Marbury versus Madison decision, and this one's fascinating because you conservatives point to it all the time that laws that are repugnant to the Constitution are no law at all. That was in the decision. I don't know if I got the quotation exactly right, but I'm pretty close. And that part of it is absolutely right. That if there is a law that is absolutely repugnant to the Constitution, then it should be struck down. Easy peasy on that one. But Marbury versus Madison has been stretched so far that it has allowed judges to become activists. That is, that they are legislating from the bench, writing law, creating law out of whole cloth in judicial decisions, just like this guy in the telling Trump to turn the plane around. That's exactly what was happening there. The Trump administration is absolutely in the right. It is the job of the executive branch to execute the law, and that's exactly what they were doing. So for a judge to say, no, all these illegal aliens, they got to go through court, I mean, it's absolutely against the law. And I love this argument that the Alien Enemies Act from 1798, well, that's an old law. Yeah, it's an old law, and we shouldn't pay any attention to it anymore. It's on the books. It's never been repealed. It's still in force, and I see no reason why the president shouldn't follow all the laws. And be from 1798 or not. And I love Tom Homan's response when he was asked by a reporter, "Hey, what do you make of this? The president using old laws?" And his response was, "Well, the Constitution is older than that, and allegedly we still pay attention to that. So don't talk to me about old laws." Absolutely. And here's another problem. And this is kind of off topic a little bit, but we end up creating so many laws that many of them, we don't pay any attention to anymore. And every legislative session, this past one, there was over 700 different laws that were proposed. Now, I don't know, 150, 175 of them actually made it through the legislature, but over 700 laws are proposed. Now, think about that. Every single year we add, just in one state, we add 150, 200 laws, whatever the number ends up being. And you can't tell me that there were laws that were passed 20, 30, 40 years ago that we are kind of ignoring, or that we've decided there are no more, we don't really have to enforce that one anymore. It's just like all these sheriffs saying, "Yeah, well, we're not going to enforce deportation orders from ICE." It absolutely is ridiculous. And, if it's a law, it's a law. And we have to get back to being a nation of laws. That is, we enforce the laws, and that's how our country is run. Right now, we're kind of a nation of men. It's the Joseph Stalin quotation, "Show me the man, I'll show you the crime." Or, it was either Stalin or Lenin. I always get those two mixed up when it comes to quotations. But we've got to get away from that. We have to be a nation of laws and not a nation of men. And if you want a good example of what happens when we focus on individuals first and then find their crime, it's Donald Trump. That's the perfect example there. The left hates Donald Trump, and so they tried to create any situation they could to prosecute him in any way. And that's what happens. You end up getting, vendettas created over individual people, and we've just got to stop that, whatever the law is. Well, we've come to the end of another busy broadcast hour on the program. A couple of program notes before I let you go for today. Don't forget about Open Line Friday tomorrow. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but, as fast as the news has been moving, I'm sure there'll be lots of stuff. So Open Line Friday, I'll take all of your calls tomorrow. If there's anybody that wants to call in and visit about anything, the Harriet Hageman Town Hall or Rock Springs or whatever the case may be, if you want to opine, tomorrow is the day for you. Don't forget to subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. Also, every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m., this program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I've got some changes coming real soon on the program. We're waiting for some equipment to come in, and then you're going to be seeing some different stuff on the program. I'm pretty excited about it. So I can't wait to fill you in on the details. It's going to be a lot of fun. Well, anyway, have a good rest of your day and a good rest of your week, and we'll talk again tomorrow. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is the one and only Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.